Welcome into episode number 8 of Cheers to Baseball, presented by Old Dominic. He's Chris Tomito. I'm Kevin McAlpin. Happy holidays to you and yours. Thanks for joining us as we pay homage once again to the great sport of Major League Baseball. And Chris, before we get into this week's topic, obviously the topic that's been on everybody's mind here this offseason has been the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. Where will he sign? Will he stay in Southern California? What about this flight that was reportedly going to Toronto? Everyone's tracking it. Well, now we know $700 million. It's the largest contract in Major League Baseball history, but 680 of that $700 million deferred. Your initial thoughts when you heard this story break from Shohei himself on Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, so I had joked. I got the AAV right at $70 million. 3 for 210, 4 for 280. I didn't see it going to this, and I certainly didn't see how it was going to be structured. So some people tried to figure out, they start scrambling for the paperwork. Is this legal? Can you do it? Well, it wouldn't have been done unless it was legal by the collective bargaining agreement. Then what's the value of the contract? So here's my first thought. The Players Association absolutely, plus the agent, by the way, absolutely wants to be able to scream, we now have a $700 million player who got $70 million a year. What they're going to say on the other side is, well, the value of the contract is really, what, $460, $440, $400. People are going to start playing with the numbers because of how far out it's deferred. Then you look at tax implications. Is the state of California going to come after him? Well, it doesn't look like they can because the deferment is 10 years, and that gives him a right to move 1 mile outside of the state lines of California. That's Oregon, Nevada. He can go to Mexico. As long as he's a mile out of California, he won't have to pay the state taxes on the $68 million a year for the 10 years. And I can guarantee you one thing, and I'll almost guarantee 1.5. He ain't going to live in the state of California the day that deferment money is supposed to start coming in. And the other part is, I'm not so sure the group that owns the Dodgers is ever going to pay him $68 million a year for 1 year, let alone for 10 years, because unless I'm wrong, this investment is going to get so big that the group that bought it for $2 billion might end up selling it before those deferments even start.
And it's like we've talked about, you have general managers who will make these deals and go, you know what? That's someone else's problem down the road. Yeah, I've got my guy right now, but that's maybe 2 or 3 administrations beyond me that's going to have to pay those. Well, very similar situation here.
Yeah, that general manager better win a couple of World Series pretty quickly, or else, at least I know of one change that's going to come. But if Ohtani works and it's a World Series in year 1 or 2 and a World Series in 4 and 5, that's a good way for any general manager to keep his job. I think the least talked about part of this deal is the part that he's attached to the president of baseball ops and the guy who actually runs the team right now. There are no opt-outs. You know, it's like Harper did 13 years, no opt-outs. There's no opt-outs in this. But they built in if he's gone or he's gone, I have the right to opt out. And a lot of people are sort of trying to figure out, is that a little bit of dirty pool where the guys who absolutely need this to work into the contract that if you fire them, Ohtani's got a right to pull out. Let me tell you something. If this thing doesn't work out and he gets hurt a couple of times, I have no problem firing the guy and telling Ohtani to opt out. They don't have to pay you the big money at the back end of it if it happens towards the back end of this.
It really is incredible.
$2 million a year, we said it, Orlando Arce is going to make more money this year than Shohei Ohtani. So you tell me if it's dirty pool or just creative financing, because I know people who are screaming about it both ways.
Real quick, do you think this potentially changes free agency moving forward, or is this just really a one-off for a guy who makes as much as he does off the field in endorsement money? Is this just a once a generation type situation that this won't affect guys moving forward?
Tom Brady is the example of a guy who took less money than he could have on what would have been the open market to help more guys sign. Now, that's in a cap-driven league. This isn't. Ohtani wants to win a championship or 3 because, by the way, he's never going to be measured by any of his numbers.
Right.
The ties to Babe Ruth and he's a unicorn, we'll never see this again, that's all well and good. But eventually people are going to say, how much did he win? So in large part, I believe that the $2 million a year, while it's certainly good at the back end for he and his family 10 years from now in terms of the money, I do think he wants to win. He wants to win enough where people say, oh, by the way, it's not about how many wins he had and how many home runs he hit. It's how many world titles did he win. And if you win enough world titles, that is the first thing that's going to be talked about by you. So he's certainly rarish enough to believe that this isn't happening. But I think the other thing this did, I think people now realize, because it's been written about more, how many of these contracts actually have deferred payments. We had always joked about Bobby Bonilla Day. Well, this guy's going to get a $68 million check. So as Steve Phillips said, he's off the hook.
Yeah.
Bobby Bonilla is just a pimple on the ass of deferred contracts at this point now. So that part I thought was interesting as people were, even texting me or DMing me saying, wait, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts? Because it's not talked about. This one, it had to be talked about because the money was so big.
I think my favorite part about it, too, is the deferment date is the same as Bobby Bonilla Day. It is July the 1st. So, yeah, you want to talk about Bobby Bonilla Day times about 60-something. I don't know. I'm not great at math.
Yeah.
I think it's 1.1 million, whatever that ends up being. Yeah, that's the Dodgers saying to the Mets, hey, hold our beer. Watch this. Watch what we're about to do.
Yeah, and Steve Phillips, that was just funny. I didn't realize he said it. I said something on the air. It was pointed out to me that Steve Phillips pointed it out, that Steve Phillips is now officially off the hook when it comes to deferred payments.
No question about it. Well, we know that you and I are keeping the baseball talk rolling all off season long. We know the major networks as well, including our friends at MLB Network, trying to do the very same. And if you haven't caught some of the prime nine, and you and I were discussing this before we started recording, really interesting how they start going through baseball history, go back to the late 40s, come up with the best players at certain positions. And I thought left field, really intriguing one that we could start with here this offseason.
Yeah, they started 47 and up, so it's post-integration. That's one of the reasons they did it. And it's quite honestly easier. I joke about if something happened in the 1910s or certainly the 1880s, did it really happen?
Yeah.
How do you quantify the game? Even going back to 1947, there were differences. Bigger, stronger, faster, 4-man rotations, 5-man rotations, the DH, smaller ballparks. All the stuff that has changed, obviously, since 47, but they picked it as a non-arbitrary place to start. They're going to come up with the 9 best at every position. So left field, where do you put Barry Bonds with the steroid stuff? Where does Ted Williams actually fit into the whole thing? And here's why they're doing it. They've already done shortstop. If Ozzie Smith's not one of the top 9 shortstops since 1947, what the hell's going on? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. As somebody who's been in the media a long time, this is to create conversation. They're not trying to come up with anything definitive. This is subjective. There's some objectivity to it. But it's a way to keep baseball in the news 365 or as close to 365 as possible. Winter meetings end. Do you think this is surprising? This happened after winter meetings? No, because, and after even the Ohtani deal, because at that point you go, okay, what's the next thing to talk about? Well, I want to argue that my guy is 4th, not 3rd. He's 5th, not off the list. So that's what they're really doing here. They're trying to create a conversation that lasts through the winter time. There'll be a couple of, look, do I believe they goof around with some of these lists to create more conversation? I do.
Yeah.
Because that just generates it. And it's you and I and maybe even people who don't do this for a living talking about the list that might have come out last night on the network.
And number 9 on the list was Tim Raines, a guy who was certainly a lightning rod of conversation a few years back, a guy that should he be in the Hall of Fame? Where do you rank his career all time?
Stolen bases, it's interesting that, it's funny, stolen bases have come back into the game. So I don't know if he was supposed to be higher, but I do think you can have the conversation about his stolen bases and you could have it in context to today. Mm-hmm. If you would have told a 30-year-old guy 5 years ago, let me tell you about stolen bases, they would have been like, what? What are stolen bases? Because they weren't even registering in baseball. It's interesting that his name comes up in the conversation, sort of can be centered around, oh, by the way, this is a tool that nobody talked about for about 30 years in the game, certainly for 20 years in the game. Let's talk about it with a guy like this.
And left fielders, that position has changed so much over the years as well. I mean, think about it locally here in Atlanta. Some of the guys we have seen out there in left field, I mean, we've seen Evan Gattis. We've seen Eric Hinsky patrol left field.
It used to be, just hide him in right field. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
It's hide him in left field. Yeah. Can I get more out of the guy offensively? Going back to a guy like Greg Luzinski. In a world where, look, this is to me why the idiocy of DH, no DH in each league was so stupid. Ohtani's deal couldn't have even been done with the Dodgers unless the DH was universal. Think about that. Yeah. So the Greg Luzinskis of the world playing for the Phillies in a National League park, where am I going to put him? Just put him in left field. And you got to say that you hope his glove doesn't cost you more runs than his bat drives in.
Yeah, no question about it. Ralph Kiner obviously makes the list, a guy whose career numbers speak for themselves, no question about it.
I think he won the National League home run title 6 years in a row, if not 7. That's the story. Branch Rickey was the general manager of the Pirates, and Ralph Kiner actually, he led the National League, if not all of baseball, in home runs again for like the 4th or 5th year in a row, and he wanted more money. And I said, well, what do you want? He gave him a number, and Branch Rickey said, I finished in last with you. I can finish in last without you. So that's the infamous story about what general manager's office do you want to go into and which what are your demands going to be based upon perhaps against something like home runs?
And you mentioned, 6 or 7 years in a row. He finishes with 369.
Yeah, he had a back issue.
Yeah.
So he had to leave the game early because of a back issue. It was really low. His first year on the Hall of Fame ballot was really, really low because people didn't take that in consideration. What he did, how good he was at it, but did the numbers add up to 400 plus? Well, they didn't.
Right.
So he paid a little bit of a price having to wait very long to get into the Hall of Fame.
And back then, the home run numbers aren't anything close to what you see now, even in the last 15, 20 years. Heck, go back 30 years. Guys that led their respective leagues weren't necessarily putting up the gaudy offensive numbers we're accustomed to seeing.
But hits and average was working against him. But, again, I would have thought it's really strange. There are guys, and it's a little bit more in the NFL than other sports. He worked in the booth for a long time. He was very good at it. He became a Met icon in the booth. But that wasn't part of the mindset. Some of these guys get on TV, and it keeps their Hall of Fame thing alive. There are people who argue whether it was, I don't know, Howie Long or others, Lynn Swann, whoever it might be, whoever you think might have been a borderline Hall of Famer, working on TV keeps you in the public's eye, which eventually will help you out in the Hall of Fame thing.
Was there a better analyst and a better segment than Kiner's Corner back in the day?
Oh, no, listen, it was the first. Look, I joke all the time. Everything has come back to in sports where wrestling is involved in it. From Pat McAfee to sets and to screaming and to clicks and heel turns. Like, wrestling has infused itself into anything. Kiner's Corner is one of the few things that I think wrestling stole from.
Yeah.
Let's build a set. Was Ralph drunk all the time? No. Was there a couple of days where he probably was? Yes. But it was sort of that idea of, let's bring in the player of the game, and who the hell knows what Ralph is going to say, and they're going to give you a gift certificate for a watch.
Right.
That's not even lying about that. And you sponsor it from a beer company.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even a lie either. So, yeah, Kiner's Corners was a staple, no doubt about it, especially growing up if you're my age.
Yeah, no question. Tell me everything you know about Al Simmons.
So, hold on.
Putting you completely on the spot.
This can't be – that's not post-1947.
I was going to say, that's a little older.
Are they discussing Al Simmons maybe in a comparison to somebody?
Maybe. I don't know.
Unless somebody said, well, what about Al Simmons? And they said, well, the rules are supposed to be 1947 and later.
Yeah. I mean, he's hanging out with Babe Ruth, so.
Yeah, look. Oh, wait, that must be, those are really big name guys. No, Al Simmons. Al Simmons, I think, is one of those guys who had as gaudy a lifetime average as you're going to get. It wasn't Cobb, but I think Al Simmons. Look at this guy, Mel Harder, talking about him.
Yeah.
That's old school. No numbers on the guy's back.
Right.
Guy standing 3 feet away during BP, which is insane, too.
No helmets. By the way, can we go? No helmets. Can you just imagine baseball today? Had they never evolved? I mean, you'd have guys literally dying on the field.
Yeah. The whole idea of with Koufax and Drysdale and Gibson throwing at you, there wasn't ear flaps for a long time.
Right.
The helmet sat on top of the hat.
Yeah.
The helmets, I don't even know what year helmets came in. But no, you don't want to be playing this game. I'm a little bit angry at you, therefore I'm going to throw at you.
Yeah.
I don't think that's really a thing.
Now, this guy was all right, huh? Yaz?
Well, think about this. I mean, you go from Ted Williams to Carl Yastrzemski, and then Jim Rice.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good 3 in a row.
That's one hell of a run, isn't it?
Yeah. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah, that might be, look, DiMaggio to Mantle is probably also as good as it gets too, but if you can go, I double up my Hall of Famer with another Hall of Famer. That's not bad.
You've talked to a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
You ever have a chance to sit down with Yaz?
No, funny. Ask me why.
Why, Chris Domino?
He don't want to do it.
No.
And he's salty. His reputation is he's salty.
Really?
I never told you the story at the 1999 All-Star game?
No, at Fenway Park.
Yeah.
You were there.
Yeah, that's the All-Century team.
Yeah.
So I'm standing outside. I'm invited to stand outside with a couple of people as the players are coming in for the Kevin Costner-led. Here are the people who are – they're going to bring all these guys on the field.
Yeah.
Where did Carl Yastrzemski play?
He played at Fenway Park in Boston.
Yeah, where did I say the game was?
That was at Fenway Park in Boston, yeah.
Maybe the only guy, as fans were chanting names as guys got out of cars, maybe the only guy who didn't turn around to at least acknowledge fans. Some guys signed a couple of autographs, but it was mostly an acknowledgement. Ask me if he turned around to even acknowledge the fans in Boston.
Did he acknowledge the great fans in Boston?
He didn't. And then I was standing next to a police officer who had been in Boston for a long time. He said, least surprising thing you'll see.
Really?
Yeah, And again, whether it was privacy, whether it was anger, whether it was whatever it might be, bitterness. I mean, when he made an appearance with his son, Mike, in San Francisco, that was like, whoa, there's Carl, because he didn't do anything. I think he retired to Long Island. And again, I don't begrudge a guy not wanting to be in the limelight, but I knew his agent because he was the same guy who handled a lot of Stan Musial stuff. And he told me for about 2 years, Chris, I think we can do it. I think he'll do it. Nah, he doesn't want to do it. Nah, he doesn't want to do it. So he was, even those people around him said, not likely.
And those guys, man, when they don't want to do it, it just ain't happening.
Oh, yeah. Look, most of them at least will give you a shot. But this was even the guy who handled his business said, I don't see him really doing it now. So, again, to each his own. It's just a shame, because Bill Russell, another sport, but Bill Russell's kids, grandchildren, I think he even said to him, why are you letting everybody else write your narrative? Why don't you write it?
Yeah.
And Bill Russell all of a sudden went from a guy who didn't want to speak about himself to speaking about himself and doing more stuff, not to brag on himself, but just because he was funny, he was engaging, and a lot of people didn't know that. In the last 8-9 years of his life, he absolutely proved to be just that.
Yeah.
The guy who wanted to impart some wisdom on younger people. I just don't think Yaz is ever really going to have it come to that.
Well, we're halfway down the list. Speaking of Boston, we stay in Boston. A guy that obviously, Manny, being Manny, boy, you want to talk about a career, a character. I mean, I think that's what most people do when you hear the name Manny Ramirez. The first thing you sort of do is just kind of shake your head at some of the things you saw him do in the outfield.
Yeah, Manny going into the Fenway Park Green Monster Wall, and the game's starting, and he's not out there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And look, there was a lot of stuff certainly when it started, when it didn't, in terms of substance. Manny was a hell of a talent.
Yeah.
Manny, filthy talented. And clutch. David Ortiz and Manny Ramirez were two guys who made a lot of their reputation on being guys who, when a game was on the line, and Manny was part of that Cleveland team that was that 95, 96 version, 94, 95, 96 of that Young Indians core was, I mean, that was talent without having to pay talent, as good as we've seen in baseball in the last 35 years.
I think a lot of times, too, he's remembered as some of the antics and some of the things, like you said, going and using the restroom inside the Green Monster. By the way, there is no restroom inside the Green Monster. It's just an inside of a wall.
I don't think he was using the restroom. I think he was just hanging out for a little bit. Who knows what he was doing in there?
Yeah, and then cutting off the throw, which was one of the more bizarre things. But like you said, an unbelievable Terry go coming out of
It's a real thing.
Yeah, it really was.
Who knows what he was doing? Listen, I can come up with about 5 things he could have been doing in there. But the other part, too, is, what me? He was another one of those what me guys when he got busted.
Yeah.
I think he tested for, he tested positive for at least the first time.
What's that?
He tested positive, I think it was for what women take as they're trying to get pregnant.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was like, yeah, man, that was a mistake. I was like, was it? Was it? Because that's one of those where you just go, you're sort of busted.
Yeah.
It was what are they a fertility drug. I think he got tested with a fertility drug. And part of what used to happen is they used to try to mask some of this stuff. So, yeah, as far as I could tell, he didn't have a problem getting pregnant. I don't know.
But it's like you said, when you talk about that lineup with David Ortiz and Manny Ramirez, and obviously they had a lot of other pieces around him as well. I mean, that's
Albert Bell and Jim Tomei in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Filthy.
Yeah.
Filthy. So Manny was extremely talented. If you could look past some of the things, and the biggest one being steroid accusations, there he is.
Yeah. Speaking of all-time greats, the greatest of all time, Rickey Henderson. I know we've had some fun with the stolen base numbers this year in Major League Baseball being up as compared to years past. But this guy, you want to talk about a baseball reference page, not talking about his defense, we're talking about his offense and the stolen base numbers. I mean, it's incredible to see and to think what he could do in baseball in 2023 and beyond.
Power at the top of the lineup. That was different. Certainly, I don't believe it started with him, but he certainly was the guy that took it to another level. I agree with you. A lot of italics on his baseball reference page. But a game changer. If you talk to pitchers who had a pitch against him, he could change a game.
Yeah.
Vince Coleman and other guys would say, well, why, you can't steal first. There's only one reason it doesn't have on my page that I've never stolen first, because you can't steal first.
Yeah.
There are people who used to say that Rickey didn't actually leg out a double because he'd rather keep it at a single and go steal second, because that he enjoyed that more than maybe hitting the double.
Yeah.
There are people who said stuff like that. But he was a game changer. He'd start wiggling his fingers off first base, and all of a sudden now, you had a problem. Your pitcher had a problem, your catcher had a problem, and the guy at the plate's like, all right, throw me a fastball.
Yeah.
Throw me a fastball because I know you're going to want to get a little pop time on this.
Yeah.
So the fastball became everybody's friend who hit behind him.
1,406 steals. I think it's 81 career leadoff home runs. Only reason I know that off the top of my head is because of Ronald Acuna locally here in Atlanta with all of his success at the top of the order. But like you said, for many years, it was this small, speedy guy to get on base. And Ricky certainly changed that narrative. And, oh, by the way, the guy could play left field as well.
Yeah, and he was a freak. Like, he was a different type of ball player at a time where you didn't see a lot of guys like him.
Yeah.
He wasn't a slap guy to try to. He wasn't looking necessarily for the walk. He'd actually take it deep just as soon as he'd walk.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And like you said, going back, you can't steal first. No. At least not yet. Rob Manfred has not written that one into the rule book. But who knows what's to come.
To be tried in Double-A right. in a season coming up soon.
Do you think, by the way, speaking of things they've tried out in the minors, do you think this automatic ball strike thing, do you think that's actually got legs to it somewhere?
I don't know. Again, Rob Manfred seems to think he's on a roll. You know, again, we joke about standing on third thinking you hit a triple. What the NBA did with the in-season tournament, you best believe that Rob Manfred and company. Look, here's what I know about the basketball in-season tournament in the NBA. For as much as the numbers might have been up, they said betting was up 300%.
Oh, there you go.
The one thing that I've always said about baseball would love to, in a world where we can't be around Pete Rose. Gambling, it's the devil's work. If the one thing that baseball would like more than anything else is more people betting on baseball. Not fantasy, year-long fantasy, daily fantasy for sure, but I think they would like just the general population to think about baseball as a more bettable game. When they see that number, 300% up in the in-season tournament, don't be shocked if they're not sitting in the offices come January 1st trying to figure out how to have an in-season tournament.
Especially when you think about gambling and how big it is in all four major sports now as far as sponsorship goes, but also when you're the only game in town for a few months. You know, when the NBA and NHL wrap up, it's Major League Baseball for a couple of months until those real degenerates come out and start looking at lines for preseason NFL games.
God bless you if you bet the in-season tournament in the NBA, but you know what those were? Regular season games. You could have bet them anyway. Right. So they sold something. They sold you a bill of goods with courts and everything else. But I'm just telling you that Rob Manfred is probably going, what can we do as an in-season tournament?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you want to take away the All-Star game? Do you want to do something a little bit strange? Do you want to take regular season games and tell people if you go 6-0, you too can have a brand new trophy? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. They're going to try.
Yeah, they are.
They're doing something in the spring training with the minor leaguers.
Mm-hmm.
The here's my prospects to play your prospects games.
I don't get it.
Well, that's really so you could see A-ball guys.
Sure.
Who you wouldn't normally see in anything close to a TV broadcast of a spring training game. You could maybe see them playing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got sidetracked on the gambling. We completely missed Stan the Man up here. When you talk about his career accomplishments, he's the one that had the exact same number of hits on the road as he had at home, correct? I mean, you want to talk about a bizarre career accomplishment.
13-15, 13-15.
It's unbelievable. I mean, can you imagine that?
Yeah, 13-15, 13-15.
Unbelievable.
Now Musial played first base. He played in right some. I don't know how much leeway they're taking with this. Must be primary position.
Yeah, well, look, like you said, it's sparking conversation, and we know this guy was certainly debate of plenty of conversation. Barry Bonds, I don't think people understand. You go back and look at his numbers in Pittsburgh, like Hall of Fame trajectory before anything else happened. Mm-hmm. And then we all know how his numbers really ballooned, if you will, when he got to San Francisco. But this guy was on pace to be in Cooperstown well before anything of accusations happened when he was in a Giant uniform.
But I think because wrong place, wrong time for him, and the numbers were so big, 70-plus home runs, winning MVPs at a time, there was no natural progression of his career fading away. And you can't say, well, they know how to eat better now and they know how to lift better now. And I think it was his obstinance. It was everything beforehand in his personality. Look, he had plenty of douche in him before any of this stuff. But if you add that on, you're in the media, you bring that up. I can tell you, I've had enough pitchers tell me, most talented guy they've ever seen standing 60 feet away from them. Mm-hmm. That's good enough for me to let me know how talented he was. Yeah. So I can play the game of how talented he was, talk to the guys who had to try to get baseballs by him. No problem in that. But it was the flaxseed oil, and it was the, sort of the look what you guys are doing to me, but he never addressed it. He thought he was above addressing it. Okay, so if you want if you want to play the fiddle at both ends, you got to pay a little bit of a price. Now, here's what he doesn't pay: a price on a list like this, because I'll guess Ted Williams is going to be number one. Mm-hmm. And if you're only behind Ted Williams on any list, I can tell you can't complain about people discounting what your career was, even though the MVP's late. 3 in a row or 4 in a row?
It was at least 3.
3 in
Might
a row.
be 4, yeah.
At a time when everybody is basically, you're not using a walker, but you're not doing the things he did. There was no natural progression of his aging process.
Yeah.
But he still gets to be second on an all-time left fielder list. So, again, what's he going to do? Cry that he's not in front of this guy?
Yeah. I don't think anybody's crying they're not in front of Ted Williams.
This guy's a freak.
We've talked about this on the pregame show. For a guy who, what was his age, 26, 27 seasons when he was in active military service, you think about what he did and what the numbers he did put up over the course and how much better they could have. Like, he could have been even better than he was when all was said and done.
Oh, yeah. He might have had 700 home runs.
Yeah.
But Amanda, you're a young woman, correct? You consider yourself a young woman. Do you know how many wars this guy fought in? He fought in 2. He was so good at the first time, he went back for another one in Korea.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's all you need to know. He missed 5+ years of his time.
For as great of a ball player as what people will say, he was a better fighter pilot, right?
Yeah, 2010 eyes. And, yeah, he came back after missing a couple of years, a couple of times, and was still Ted Williams.
Yeah.
So, listen, people say, well, he wasn't much of a left fielder. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? He wasn't much of a left fielder?
Yeah.
Yeah, who cares? That's like saying, I don't know. Let me use a really good example here. That would be like saying Kate Beckinsale isn't much of a cook. Who cares?
Right.
At a certain point, if we're going to have a conversation, there was a who cares moment in it.
And playing left field at a place like Fenway Park, people don't understand, that is a challenge in and of itself.
If you play it long enough, look, at the end of the day, people would say, hey, Ted, here's the deal. Go back to the wall, don't run into the wall, and anything that comes off the wall, the shortstop will get. But again, if you want to tell me that, Ted Williams is a left fielder, who cares?
Yeah.
Robert Redford. I don't know if you know this. Robert Redford, he wasn't really good. I don't know. He wasn't a great astronomer. Yeah, the job he needed to do, which was act, he was really good at.
Yeah.
Correct? He was really good at.
Yeah.
So he's such a bad left fielder that they say he's the best left fielder in the history of the game. That's how much people should care about it.
You take any issue with any of the guys on this list?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the shortstop one, if I'm not wrong, it might have been the Ozzie Smith thing. Might have been the one that I don't think he was on the Prime 9. So, yeah, I don't think he was. Is this, by the way? Yeah, no, I think it's called Prime 9.
Yeah,
and I think it's just the 9. I don't know what other than the dates. But Al Simmons being on there, I don't really understand that. So maybe I got to go look again. Look, they've got me confused, and that's all they want is idiots just talking about stuff like this for as many days as possible during the off season. Yeah.
Well, look, holidays are right around the corner. Yeah. We know that. And obviously there's been so much going on as far as the world of baseball is concerned, and that will certainly continue as we move forward. Do want to mention our friends at Old Dominic have hooked us up with some great libations for the holidays. Like you said, if you're going to a party, you're going to a friend's house, Don't go empty-handed. Bring a couple bottles of Old Dominic with you.
Hi, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Like, you don't have to even wrap it up. Just hand it to them.
Oh, my hands are empty. Yeah, now I know who you are.
Yeah.
All you got to do is this. Happy Holidays. Then you know what you're not known as? That guy.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
No.
You don't want to be that guy. You can be the guy, but you never want to be known as that guy.
If you walk in with a couple of bottles of Old Dominic, you'll be the guy. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
I've been sampling the cask strength back at home, and whew,
yeah,
it's been a happy holiday season so far.
Happy holidays, as we like to say. Right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
So we want to want to thank the fine folks at Old Dominic for being part of our coverage, bringing this to you as we continue to look back on the great history of this game. We'll continue to do it all off season. We'll roll it right into baseball season. And I know you and I have talked about it. Once the holidays are over, like for me, it's all systems go, man. It's like 5 weeks till spring training. Bam, let's get this thing rocking and rolling. So while it's a little cold here in Atlanta, I got my beautiful reindeer Christmas sweater on.
Yeah,
it's a little chilly out this morning. Yeah, the warmer weather's not far away.
No, I believe that's a polo, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't that the polo collection?
That is.
From Ralph Lauren?
Sure.
I believe it is.
Yeah. It's even got a spot you can put your beer in here, which is the best part.
Nice.
So you don't have to walk around and hold your beer. You can,
or your heaters.
Well, that too.
Yeah. Put your heaters in there.
And it's not Rudolph, it's Brudolph, by the way.
Oh,
he's
I
part
see
of
what's happening
Santa's
there.
drinking
Oh, my
squad because
goodness.
he's got his.
Oh, the funny sweater people.
There you go. Exactly. Well, listen, Chris.
Thank you, Amanda, by
Yes.
the way, for doing these.
Thank you, Amanda.
Appreciate it. Happy holidays to you and your family.
Happy holidays to you as
Thank
well.
you very much. Appreciate it.
Feeling
Thanks again
better,
to
right?
Dominic.
A little bit. You're moving around a little better.
Yeah.
Good days and bad.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Listen, I'll just drink later tonight, and it'll be okay. I'll take my pills and some drinks.
Yeah.
What? No, I didn't say that.
That sounds good to me. Folks, enjoy your holidays. We'll get together again real soon. In the meantime, make sure you pick up some old Dominic, and we'll continue paying homage to Major League Baseball history as we continue throughout the offseason right here on the Braves Radio Network.